This show is all about interviewing interesting people and learning. More than a decade ago, I saw a story on ESPN, and it was about a man named Richie Parker. That story is one that I never forgot about. And occasionally I would go online and watch that story again because Richie was such an inspiration. Ever since that story aired, I wanted to interview Richie. And frankly, I never thought it would be possible. A lot of us in the media, we have someone that we want to interview. It might be a celebrity, it might be a musician, it might be an author, for example, and we hope to interview them throughout our career, but it might never happen. And we hope that it could happen, but sometimes it just never works out. I have always said that I wanted to interview Richie Parker. So the fact that he has decided and agreed to come on this program just makes me so thrilled. It's just absolutely awesome. So Richie Parker is here today. And Richie, I'm so glad that you agreed to come on. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
So when ESPN first reached out to you about this story, you were working at Hendrick and you had so many accomplishments. Did you think that your story was that inspirational? Did you think that you had this incredible story to tell?
I knew my story would mean something to people. It wasn't just ESPN initially. There were a lot of other news stations that reached out that wanted to do a story on me of some sort. And I avoided it for a long time. I avoided it for a few years, actually. I really didn't want to separate myself in that way from my teammates and didn't want to highlight myself in that way from my teammates. So that was one reason why I avoided it for a long time. And my thought process at that time, which was a little bit misled, but my thought process after a lot of requests was, okay, I'll do it with one news station and with hopes that, they will leave me alone after that. And Hendrick Motorsports had some relationships with people at ESPN, and that's kind of what we ended up doing with ESPN. They had a trust level there, and I met with the producer, and I felt like she would do the story justice in a way that would not kind of highlight me in ways that would be unfair to my teammates.
Yeah, I mean, it is all about the team. I mean, especially when you talked about working as a team, and when you went in at Hendrick, you were just an intern and you felt like this was just going to be an internship, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a 10-week internship. The ESPN video, I think, mentions 10 months, but yeah, it was only supposed to be 10 weeks. I got in there and made some awesome relationships and connections when I got there. And my plan, as I tell people, was just to do the 10 weeks, and I was going to law school after that. That was the plan, and but that wasn't God's plan.
Yeah. And for folks who don't know anything about Hendrick or NASCAR, to put that into perspective, I'm just going to just talk about it. Hendrick, most winning organization in NASCAR. So you're talking about Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr. They've won a number of different championships, and you were part of those different championships. You were designing race cars, and in that story with ESPN, Tom Rinaldi did that story. And again, if you know anything about sports and you know Tom Rinaldi, I mean, he's like the best of the best. And the story won an Emmy, I believe. It was like an 8-minute story. Again, I would go back and watch it online because it was just a phenomenal story, the way it was told. And it started out with you going about your day, and you are opening up the car door with your shoulder. You're driving with your feet. You are using the keyboard with your feet. And the lines are, how do you go about your day? And it makes you think about the fact that, if you didn't have arms, how would you get through your day? And it does make you think. But I think from your perspective, you don't think about that, right?
Yeah, not at all. This is the only life I've ever known. So I approach it in that way that, just approach each day like this is the life that God set out for me to live. And I don't really think second about that. Don't think about it at all, really. Just go out and attack life. It was a blessing to be able to start my career and racing career at Hendrick Motorsports, but thankfully I came in there, I wasn't a fan at all. I wasn't a fan of racing. I wasn't a fan of Hendrick Motorsports, didn't really know a lot about it. I knew of Jeff Gordon and the success that he had. I knew that name, but I really wasn't a fan. But I think that served me well in a lot of ways because from day one, I was there to work and to prove to myself that I could get the job done and be a contributor to that team. And also realized, being at a place like Hendrick Motorsports, because it is like the Yankees of racing, that you don't become the Yankees unless you do the work, right? Everyone at Hendrick Motorsports isn't what it is. It's only that way because people do the work, right? And they work together as a team. Yeah. So that's something I learned at a young age and has served me well even after that.
But you had always loved cars, not necessarily NASCAR, but you always loved cars as a kid.
Yeah, that was my passion, not necessarily racing, but just classic cars in general. I grew up around that with my dad and my mom. My mom's into old cars as well. I had a lot of uncles and cousins that were into classic cars. So that has always been a passion of mine, and actually something I've had to be careful and balance, because sometimes it's easy for something that's a passion of yours and something that you enjoy as a hobby to no longer be that if you do it and it's kind of that daily grind. But yeah, it's still a big hobby of mine and something I really enjoy. I enjoy the relationships that I've made kind of in that hobby and through the hobby more so than the actual physical cars themselves.
Tell me about where you grew up in South Carolina.
Yes, I grew up in Beaufort, South Carolina, down the what we call the low country of South Carolina, or I call God's country. So it's beautiful down there. Beaufort, a lot of people have heard of Parris Island. That's in Beaufort County. Hilton Head is in Beaufort County. We are almost right in the middle of Charleston and Savannah, Georgia.
You talk a lot about your faith, God's country, and faith is really important to you and also your mom and dad too.
Yeah. I mean, even when I get a chance to speak to groups, I'm not the kind of person that's going to beat you over the head with my faith, but I would be inauthentic to not mention God, because God's in the forefront of everything that has happened in my life and everything that I do to this day, right? So that foundation is critical. When you're talking about my story, talking about my life and my beliefs, so it's always there, and it's the most important thing in my life. That's one thing I believe when I go talk to people, and this is one belief I have about life in general, that it comes down to three things, right? It comes down to yourself and making sure that you spend enough time to pour into yourself in the ways that you need to, whatever that means, right? That could mean something you enjoy. For me, I like to go cruising in old cars, right? It could be exercise, which is important to me right now too. It's something I'm prioritizing. The second thing is to spend time on other people and prioritize others. That could mean your friends and family, doing something for them, or random acts of kindness, just the things that you can do for others that not expecting anything else in return. And then that third thing is God, right? And you have to have those three things working together, in my mind, to have that true and complete life.
Your mom too. I mean, I in that story, your parents obviously, their mindset was so critical with how they influenced you and how you grew up and how you became the man that you have become. Your mom said, we are going to make it work. We might do it differently, but we are going to make it work. Whether it's riding a bicycle, whether it is driving a car, whether it's anything. And now that you are older, do you really appreciate that? Do you appreciate their mentality as you were growing up?
Yeah, I very much so appreciate it. I think I appreciate it even more as I get older, because I'm able to look back on those times and think about the age at which my parents were during the times that they were so influential in my life and in the direction of my life. So yeah, very much so appreciative of them and all that they've done in my life.
Yeah. And you had said too that recently that they also fought for you when it came to education, where you were entering public school, and the public school system said, well, maybe you should go the special education route, and they're saying, no, he needs to be in the honors path. I mean, they were fighting for you behind the scenes.
Yeah, they were. They had a couple people in the community that they, leaned on to help with that. But for the most part, there wasn't a lot of support for me just being in the normal population of the school system. So they definitely had to fight for that. And I'm extremely thankful that they did, right? Because I needed to be challenged and pushed in the way of being in honors courses and things of that nature instead of um, the opposite and being in a program that might not push me and challenge me the way that I needed to. So yeah, those are small things, but they're huge in the big scheme of life, and were big for my future, for sure.
Did you ever think in your mind about or realizing that you were different? You've talked about your circle growing up in South Carolina. And when you are in a circle, you have that support that is so critical, whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends, whether it's your teachers. But when you get outside that circle, sometimes it can be a little intimidating. Sometimes there can be people who aren't as comfortable with whatever it may be. Did you ever realize, or was there a point that sticks out in your mind that you go, oh, I am different?
Yeah, it's usually every day. It's usually those moments every day. When I wake up, I don't feel like I'm different, and I go about my normal routine, my daily routine, and then I walk into the grocery store, and there's some 5-year-old kid that screams out at the top of their lungs, to their parents, like, well, where are his arms? What's wrong with him? So in those moments, that's when it kind of sets me back, and I have to realize, yeah, I am different. But it's life, right? And it's I've learned to embrace that. When I was younger, it was just the opposite, and just the thought of standing on the stage and talking to people would have been something that wouldn't I would not have entertained at all. Even when I was younger, man, just the thought of going into a store was something that I avoided just because of what I just mentioned. But yeah, I've grown to embrace it. I've grown to embrace this life that I have, and realize that God made me this way, and I'm able to make an impact with others. And my story isn't just about me. My story is about everyone else and the lives that they're living, and helping them to realize that they can push through whatever they're going through in their lives.
Yeah. We did talk about God, and you talked about God again. Have there been moments, though, that you have asked God, why? Like, why? I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to go to a school dance. Why, God?
No, I've never asked that.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I've never asked that question. Now, don't get me wrong. I get impatient at
Yeah.
times. I want things to happen quicker than they happen at times. And there's certain times when I'm trying to figure things out in my own way, and it doesn't happen as quickly as I want to. And I have moments of frustration, but I think those moments aren't much different than anyone else, and usually they're just moments. That's one thing that I'm big on too, is not letting those moments turn into to days and weeks, right? So they're just moments. And but yeah, never questioned why God made me this way. And that's where it comes back to that embracing life, because I'm thankful for the life that I have. But if anything, it has given me a perspective that not many people have, right? And I see people every day that have the use and activity of all of their limbs, but they're not living their full life, right? So to me, that's sad. And some people see me physically and they think, oh man, that's sad, and the life that he's living is sad. But I'm living life. I'm enjoying life. I've got awesome friends and awesome family. I've got an awesome circle. I have nothing to question God about in that way. And if anything, I need to thank him for the perspective that I have that is uncommon in this world, I believe. And hopefully that's what I can share with others.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Yeah, you have said that you don't wait for doors to open. I mean, you are knocking down your own walls. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I haven't always though, and I've had moments even recently where I was waiting for doors to open, and knocking on those doors, and just patiently waiting, and almost kind of begging those doors to open. And I'm at a point in life now where if certain doors open, that's awesome, and if that's the door that God wants me to walk through, then that's great. But sometimes you have to make your own path, and that's the mindset that I have now more than I ever have had. I've ever had in the past is to, if those doors don't open, then I have to make my own way.
Yeah. And when I reached out to you, because I wanted to interview, again, I have always wanted to interview you, and this show is perfect for this setting. And you had said that you were kind of, basically transitioning from, you were working for Hendrick, mechanical engineering background, you have a graduate degree, then you also were doing some military work for Hendrick, and then you became a chief of staff for a football program. But now you are going to be, and you are, a full-time motivational speaker. And I said, Richie, that's perfect. That, to me, that's like the perfect job for you. And I think that you have so much to offer. Just, not even really knowing you, but just, I feel like, watching your story, I feel like that's the perfect job for you, because you can teach so much to so many people.
Yeah, and a big part of it was just me embracing the idea of doing this. For a long time, like when I was back at Hendrick and some other roles that I've been in, I kind of saw like stepping away from that daily grind and talking about my life is weakness in a little bit for me, right? Like I have always just been so focused on grinding and working hard and accomplishing the next task and problem solving. But I'm at a point now where I do realize the value of me sharing my life, opening up a little bit to others, and what that can mean for other people, but also what it means for me too. Like I get a lot out of that, and it's meaningful for me in that way. So, and I've grown a lot in the last decade or so. I've learned a lot about myself, and I feel like I'm able to go out with a message now that's not just about embracing life, but some of the core values that I have now in my life. And I recently went through a course with a good friend that puts on a program called the Intentional Leader to help me define what some of those core values are. And his name is Cal Walters. He and his wife Natalie put this program on. He teaches this core value course, and through that, it's helped me define that, integrity, empathy, resilience, humility. Those are the things that are important to me that I feel like I can go out and share with others.
When you worked at Hendrick, you worked there for quite some time. You had a lot of success. Why did you feel like it was time to move on from such a prestigious position?
Yeah, so for me, it never was about the position or the organization from a prestige standpoint. It was about just doing the job and enjoying what I was doing and doing it with my teammates and what we were able to accomplish. So yeah, I was there for all of Jimmy's championships, so all 7 of those, and yeah, and I was there for a couple of others while I was on the military side. But I got to a point where just another race win didn't drive me like it used to, and I was the kind of guy that it wasn't just a 8-hour a day job, right? Like I was going to do whatever it took in my small area of the organization to help the team and the organization be successful. So that meant a lot at times. That meant a lot of hours. That meant some oftentimes every day of the week. So it takes a lot of passion and drive for what you're doing to devote yourself at that level. So when I got to a point where I realized, man, I think I want to do something else that could be more impactful and serve myself and serve others in a different way, I knew it was time to step away. I'd accomplished everything that I felt like I could there, and very proud of that. The time that I was there with other people, because you're in an organization with over 500 people. You're a very small piece of the pie. You just have to make sure that small piece that you have a responsibility for, just don't let it fall short.
And it's my understanding that you decided that you wanted to leave Hendrick after a win.
Yeah, I did. It was after a race win, after one of Jimmy's wins. I came in, I think the Monday after that win, and gave my notice that I was, going to step away. And that's kind of what it was for me. Like it just, I was driven by accomplishing a certain goal with my teammates. And that goal was to win. But when it got to the point where I didn't fully enjoy the wins, then I knew it was time to do something else. Right? I was in a position and at an organization I probably could have stayed in until I retired. but I like pushing myself. Like, this life is short,
Yeah.
right? So if you want to do something and you want to accomplish certain things, and it involves risk, and it involves stepping out of your comfort zone, and there are some difficult days and some trying times associated with that, because you're walking away from certain guarantees, but you have one life to live. So sometimes you have to step out on faith and push yourself. And I'm glad I did. Like, I've had a great career back at Hendrick Motorsports, and developed, more than anything, relationships for a lifetime. And that's what really matters, those relationships.
Yeah, I think wherever you work, and especially if you work at some place for a long time, it is the people that really make a difference. And I can speak from experience, every TV station, but certainly here, it's the people that I love. You know, your 1964 Chevy Impala, you still have that, is that right?
Yes, still have it.
And
Yeah.
did you drive that to Iowa? Did you drive the car to Iowa for the podcast?
No, I didn't drive that to Iowa. I have a fairly newer truck that I drove to Iowa. So yeah, last week I just got back from a almost 2,000-mile round trip
Yeah.
to Iowa for that podcast. But no, that's I'm thankful for the newer truck. That newer truck makes a trip like that possible. Um, I've done some crazy things in old cars, and I've taken some long trips, but that's not one I would like to do. Going all the way to Iowa in an old car, that's a lot.
Where
I've had moments. I have a '63 Impala as well, a convertible, and I used to take it on a lot of longer trips. And I've had times where I've sat on the side of the road swapping spark plugs out with my feet, as soon as the engine cooled off enough, just so I could make it on the rest of my trip. So um, taking long trips in old cars is not for the faint of heart, for sure. But it's something I enjoy at times.
And your dad also, I mean, he bought one, and you guys kind of built it. He kind of rebuilt it, and you were part of that rebuild as well as a little boy.
Well, so my dad, yeah, he bought a '57 Chevy, but he bought it when I was just like 1 year old.
Oh, wow.
But he's had it my whole life. He still has it, right? So as it is with old cars, he rebuilt that early on when I was just a baby, but it's ongoing, right? So that was something, as I was growing up, he was always working on that car, and still does today.
And where's home now for you?
Home right now is Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm here right now. I came up here to work with the football program, like you mentioned, until last year. And so it's still home. Got a lot of awesome relationships here and a lot of great friends. It's quite possible I'll be back in Charlotte later this year. Have a lot of long-term friends in that area, obviously, for living there for so long and racing. But I'm very thankful to be here, too. A lot of awesome people that I've met, great relationships, and it's a beautiful place here in Charlottesville.
Are your parents still in South Carolina?
Yeah, they are. They're down in Beaufort. I think they plan to stay there forever. That is home for them now. They're not originally from there. They moved there in their 30s, but it's one of those places that really pulls you in. So when they moved down there and made it home, I think they plan to stay there forever.
Yeah. And so now with your motivational speaking, are you going to be traveling around the country? Is that kind of the plan now?
Yeah, that is the plan. I have done a little bit of it in the past. It was always while I was working full time, and partly when I was in grad school as well. So it'll be awesome to be able to do it now and have be able to devote the right energy and focus towards doing this. There were times in the past when I was doing it and I felt like I was pouring from an empty cup, just with all the responsibilities that I had at that time. But yeah, just like this trip to Iowa that I made last week, I'm looking forward to some other long trips, and hopefully when the stars align, that I'll be able to do road trips to a lot of places. But I'm sure there will be things that I'll have to fly to. Like, I have gone 2 or 3 times out to the West Coast to speak at events and speaking engagements. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, to go wherever the good Lord wants me to go.
Yeah, I was telling you too, I mean, there's so many opportunities for you, whether it's team sports, whether it's business groups, whether it's faith-based groups that would, I think, love to hear from you. And so I don't think you're going to have any problem, hearing from folks that want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think my story think it resonates with a lot of people in an authentic way. And that's the big thing for me. That's one reason why I've avoided doing this in the past is I saw a lot in the speaking world that I felt like wasn't authentic.
Yeah.
And I did not want to be that or even be excuse me, or even be associated with that. So I'm really looking forward to going out in my own way, delivering a message that I believe that the good Lord wants me to give, but doing it in an authentic way and connect with people on that level.
Was there one person who kind of convinced you that you should be doing this, like you should be a motivational speaker, and you said, oh, yeah, and you really kind of took that to heart? Or did it kind of sink in your own brain?
I think it had more to do with it just sinking in my own brain for the most part. Now, I've had a lot of friends that have, and I say friends, just people in my circle, when I talk about that close circle, that have encouraged me to do this for some time. And I was resistant for a long time. So, but those voices have been louder recently. And it's been a lot of prayer too, a lot of prayer. There's a lot of things that I wanted to do. There's been opportunities that have been presented to me that, I could go down a different path, but through a lot of prayer, I feel like this is what God wants me to do. And I feel like this is probably the most impactful thing that I can do versus going and getting a desk job. I've proven to myself and others that, I can do engineering work. I've proven to myself and others that a logistics role, like working at a chief of staff in a football program, that's something I can do as well, and something I truly enjoy. So I've had thoughts about stepping back into roles like that, but I constantly come back to the speaking side of things. I believe this is what God wants me to do. So I'm trying to be faithful and stay the course and see where this leads to.
Well, you'll never lose your engineering. I mean, that's always going to be in your brain. But I mean, you need to capitalize on what you have. And I think, you're obviously doing that. Your website is richieparker.com. And it is Embrace Your Drive, motivational speaker, former NASCAR engineer, inspiring people to embrace any challenge and own their road to success. Richie Parker, it was a pleasure to finally interview you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for watching this episode of The Curious Bee with Ellen McNamara. More episodes on Fox Local.